Hey sis, to be honest with you, I don't listen to male podcasters, especially black male ones. Not because I don't like them, I'm very indifferent to them. I neither like or dislike them, but I do find them laughable and sometimes I do catch second-hand embarrassment as a black person. This is when I really consider what they're saying as a group of men. Once again, the opportunity for some reflection and laughter is here. So let's piss ourselves laughing with this latest bit of dating advice. Umar Johnson's recent interview with a black woman on an Australian podcast called Bittersweet was one of these occasions I really considered what was being said. It made me circle back around, take a deep look at his wording, viewpoint, and advice, in quotations, he has for black and brown women. It could be argued that his latest attempt to influence black women could lead to two things for black women and black men if anyone listens to him. First, black men could permanently take up residence as the underdogs of society. Two, black women lowering their quality of life and becoming very unhappy just to say, I've got a black man, side note, in quotations, who is an underachiever. My focus and interest are not the position black men could find themselves in based on what Umar Johnson has said, as I decentered men's needs in favour for black women and brown women's as a group of women and my own needs years ago. It's where his advice could actually land black and brown women based on what research is already showing us. If we care to listen to him, this is my only focus and interest. So the interview on the above video that I've shared on the written version of this article by Bittersweet Podcast on the 26th of November 2024. You can go directly to this channel and search for it yourself if you're listening to this on YouTube, with Umar Johnson as a man in his 50s with this mindset and advice is really damaging for black women. Around the 14-minute and 25-second mark is where it gets interesting, and black women really need to listen in, use our brains and see what's really going on here. Then just completely ignore him. Don't expect a finished black man. This is his advice. The Australian black lady starts to talk about the issues she has noticed from her listeners, who we can assume are black women, struggle with when it comes to finding dateable men. And that's to use her words exactly. This we know now is not just a trend for black women. Thanks to research and published journal papers, it seems like all women are noticing and having the same struggle. Hence we have birth strikes and the 4B movements happening around the world, which I have written about and covered in my essay, Is Feminism to Blame for Korean Women Taking Down the Patriarchy? And also Where Culture Meets Feminism, How Patriarchy Oppresses Korean Women. And these will be linked on the written version of this article. When the black female presenter asserts that all women are really looking for is decent men, and by this she meant an emotionally intelligent man, a man in a position to provide should they have a family, and a man in the same financial bracket as her, this sounds simple enough, and really I'd agree with all that she said. If I were looking for a man to date today, this lady could sure talk on my behalf. I'd trust her sense of direction on what is decent when it comes to men. Umar Johnson's response to what the presenter has found for black women in the dating world as a struggle is what will land black and brown women in problems. Around the 14-minute and 25-second mark, he goes on to say, black women should not expect the same stability the Caucasian European could provide the white woman. My question was why? And his response is, because the black man faces white supremacy and racism. This has been a valid argument since we came off the plantation as black people. However, what we, and by this I mean those of us who are not just here to coddle men, are actually noticing and becoming more open to now is that black and brown women also face this same racism and the same white supremacy that Umar Johnson cites. Not only that, black and brown women are subject to gender discrimination, which means she is in a worse position than the average black man. Thankfully, the black female presenter could see this for herself, and she points this out to Umar Johnson, who does not really give a response to this when she says this. However, this is the first comment from Umar Johnson that will keep black men as the underdogs of society. While this is their issue to look out for, I personally believe it's something black and brown women should really be aware of and deeply consider it, especially the boy mums out there who are actually raising sons. Umar Johnson, keeping black men in a state of arrested development. Is it a question or statement? I pose to you, reader. I'd say when we look at the facts and research, it's more of a statement, not a question. If we take what Umar Johnson has said and use racism as the only valid reason, which Umar Johnson has from this interview, as to why black women should not expect a finished man, quotation directly from him, or a black man to be as financially stable as any other man, this mindset is Umar Johnson himself advocating to keep black men in a state of arrested development. It's a statement that this mindset will actually do this. It's not a question. This is to say, arrested development over their ability to be self-sufficient, provide for themselves and any family that they should have, and also overcome barriers to racism, or if you like, learn to hold their own balls and face racism rather than doing this from under the skirt of a black or brown woman. Umar Johnson's viewpoints assumes that the grown boy, man, child of a black man, as I like to call him, can't achieve anything solely based on his race, as Umar Johnson asserts. How many centuries have we bought into this alone being a problem? The question is then, how can, do, and have black women tried to achieve based on their race, which is obviously the same race as black men, when they face the same racism and even gender discrimination? Thought.com told us a lot about what black women were achieving within education in the midst of racism in their research they did a few years back, and the link to their research is in the written article. JP Morgan also told us what black women were achieving in terms of entrepreneurial pursuits in the midst of racism, and again, their direct link to their research is in the written article. While these are American studies, it probably would be safe to assume that the trends found by both JP Morgan and Thought Co. could and probably are reflected throughout the African diaspora. And by that, I mean with black women who reside outside the USA also. If black men, as a group of men, wish to buy into Umar Johnson's rationale for why black women should not expect a man who is standing on his own 2 feet, let them. That is actually their lookout. However, his rationale stems their motivation, drive, or even ambition or expectation to get out there and become a finished man. Again, in quotations, to use Umar Johnson's direct words, who is financially stable. The latter is how it will keep black men as the underdogs of society, and this is what boy mums raising black sons and black women who date black men should really be aware of. So let's look at the statistics then. The outcome of Umar Johnson's advice for black women, statistically speaking, what does this show us? On the other hand, if black women wish to buy into Umar Johnson's rationale around the race of black men being his only downfall when she faces the same racism too, but she can be seen as achieving not based on my personal opinion, but based on what research shows us and a few pieces I have shared with you today. And in some respects, these women have statistics of achieving more than black men. This is to her own detriment if she wishes to not see what is really going on when you look at the bigger picture. This is where my heart is invested the most, to wake up black women and alert them to why Umar Johnson's viewpoint on race being the only issue and advice for black women who are dating should be disregarded. Number one, if we do not disregard this advice, firstly, she is enabling black men to remain in this state of arrested development by not expecting much from him and buying into what Umar Johnson has said. Number two, she is taking on a fully grown man who has the advantage of being male in society, so naturally he has the ability to be paid more at her expense, as she is a woman who would and could face gender discrimination. She's taking on this man as a son or a dependent, not a partner boyfriend, life partner, or even potential husband. And thirdly, she will tie herself to a lifetime of poverty by buying into Umar Johnson's advice. As the Brookings Institute found in their research, that poverty in the black community is down to the underachievement of the men. And again, on the written version of this article, you will find the direct link to that research. Women inherit this from the men they choose who are underachieving, according to this piece of research. The research from the Brookings Institute cited and found that the report is another contribution to the growing literature showing that race gaps in the intergenerational persistence of poverty are in large part the result of poor outcomes for black men. Specifically, Chetty et al. Show that black men born into low-income parents are much more likely to end up with a low income than a black woman, a white woman, and especially a white man. So let me just reiterate that last part again. Chetty et al. Show that black men born to low-income parents are much more likely to end up with a low individual income than black women, white women, and especially white men. The Brookings Institute research is something I've referred to a few times as it is key to helping black and brown women understand that we are not here to be doing well, as research shows, as cited above by JP Morgan and Fort.co, but at the same time to expect or even accept that the males in our community do not do well, because we will or can make up the shortfall, all while blaming the latter on racism that black and brown women experience along with gender discrimination also. The findings in the research, The Inheritance of Black Poverty, It's All About the Men, is the outcome of Umar Johnson's advice. And this is the point I'm trying to make here. Really allow this to sink in. It is the outcome and where things will head if we do what he is proposing. Accept these underachieving men as partners and fund their lifestyles, as he goes on to talk about, which I'm about to address. It is the outcome of Tyler Perry's Accept the Light Bill guy advice, which we heard about, which I also wrote about, and there is a link to that in the written version of this article. It's also the outcome of being a pick-me-sha, as I've heard it called, when a woman will accept underachieving men and are cool with that just so they can say, hey girl, yeah, I got a man, but all the while this man is an underachiever. When as many black and brown women can understand that this research finding is potentially the outcome of what Umar Johnson's advice leads to, the better it will be for black and brown women as a group of women. We can't overlook the impact his advice has on you, me, and sis over there. We certainly can't continue to give centuries of sympathy to the men in our community while they continue to disrespect us. Just see the rest of the manosphere's narrative around black women and children and how they should be treated. Black women's mistakes, according to Umar Johnson. Now, this was probably the most laughable part of Umar Johnson's interview for me personally as I listened to it, because at the age of 41, I always judge a man on his income, and I have done so since my late 20s into my early 30s. I learnt my lesson from my first husband that this is a mistake as a woman that we really can't afford to do, which is to overlook how financially stable a man is before we commit to him. Prioritizing a man's ability to help sustain himself and any family that we may have has been like gold to me. It led me to the right man eventually, even though I don't want any more children. The bottom line is, I'm not here for any struggle love that men in the black community wish to promote to us exclusively as a group of women, as per Tyler Perry or Umar Johnson or Kevin Samuels and all these other men. I'd rather be single and financially stable myself and enjoy my life if the alternative is to be a mother to my partner. I'm so glad more women like me are saying no to this, but I'd still love more women to also say no. Around the 15-minute and 36-second mark, Umar Johnson goes on to address the mistakes successful black women make, in quotations. I found this very interesting. Firstly, he asserts if you're a doctor, lawyer, or professional woman looking for a black man to date in your field, it will be impossible and you might need to tone it down a bit. Secondly, black men need to work twice as hard to get half as much. I asked myself, why are there not many black or brown professional men in these fields that he's mentioned, or in any professional field that any black or brown woman may be in? The answer will lead us back to what the research on the inheritance of black poverty found. If you're willing to be real about things and take off the rose-tinted glasses, you will actually see it. This research finding, along with the mindset of accepting black men or any men with little ambition, is the reason why there are not many professional men, quotation marks, as Umar Johnson asserts. If black women are making it into these professional and well-paid fields in the face of racism, just like black men face, with an added touch of gender discrimination for them also, then why can't black men make it into these fields who are not facing the same level of oppression as black and brown women anyway? The point Umar Johnson makes about black men working twice as hard to gain half as much as other men, we can assume this is what he means. It actually works both ways. This is what he's failing to see and to address. So do black and brown women work twice as hard. The outcome is, though, that black and brown women are attaining more than black and brown men, as the research shows. So why are black men not having the same or similar outcomes when they have this male advantage that we do not have as women? We can't say again it's down to racism, because we as women, we also face this too. In my opinion, this is the mistake black women actually make, not realizing or remembering that men don't have it worse than women, especially when it comes to racism. We are on an equal playing field when it comes to racism, but an unequal playing field when it comes to actual oppression. This is because women have double oppression, gender and race, and men have an advantage being male in gender that women do not have. How different groups of men deal with the advantage they have just because they are men, we see in society today. I won't pinpoint anything out, just think about it and really think about this point that I'm trying to make. Given the above fact that both black genders are facing the same level of racism, but black and brown women make it through, I don't think Umar Johnson's advocacy for black and brown women to tone it down, in quotations, as he said, and to stop looking for finished men, in quotations, as he has said, or men who are on the same income bracket, in quotations, as he has said, I don't think any of this has much punch to it. The most oppressed demographic in society has every right to prefer or seek a man that is financially stable or in her income bracket, yada, 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 all this stuff. She can do that if she wants. Black women prioritise a man's income over his masculinity. This point that Umar Johnson makes is around the 16 minutes and 7-second mark. Looking at this deeper based on what research has shown us, we can see that black and brown women marrying down, inheriting poverty lives from selecting underachieving or less achieving black men. And again, in the written article, I have direct links to that evidence there. The above point Umar Johnson made is a loss for black women. If she does not prioritise his income as a man, she will take a loss. So women certainly should be concerned with a man's income and stability over his potential masculinity that Umar Johnson cites, because that's what it is. He does not have it yet. It's potential. If Umar is including financial stability as part and parcel of a man's masculinity according to him, so why should any woman date potential? We should not. Especially if you're a woman who is already established and of a certain age. I've already done it. I've tried and tested it for every black woman around the world almost 20 years ago. This is definitely going to give you a negative experience and a loss if you do this, trust me. Even for my younger women who are currently maybe in their 20s, don't waste some of the best years of your life dating a man's potential in any way. Be it his financial potential, his motivational potential, or his potential to be anything. He needs to be a finished product. This is not IKEA, which leads me on to his final point about this. Invest in him financially each month. That's your key to success, to finding a black man, according to Umar Johnson. From around the 16-minute and 45-second mark, the black female presenter points out to Umar Johnson that women generally are just seeking a man who can keep up with them. But generally, it seems like they're not finding this. Umar Johnson then goes on to his speech about, direct quote, investing in a man financially so that he can get where you are. Now, let's all insert an eye roll right here. He uses the example of providing a man, or providing him, whoever, with $700 per month to fund his dreams and ideas. How Umar Johnson's advocacy for financially investing in an underachiever is damaging to black women. Firstly, if any woman can afford her own bills and then still give a man $700 per month, or support him in some way financially to, quotation marks here, fuel his dreams or goals, she's dating the wrong man, period. She's pouring into him, but what is he pouring into her? And it is not going to be love. It's not going to be appreciation. It's not going to be well treatment. From my own experience, because I have been this woman in my early 20s with my first husband, what he will be pouring into her will be jealousy, infidelity, abuse towards you and any children should you have them. Him trying to sabotage any good fortune you have financially or career-wise, or putting you down for any success that you have in any of these areas. Consider this instead. Why can't he go to the bank for his financial investment he needs? Secondly, men become jealous of women who are doing well, especially if he already has a victim mindset. Umar shows for black men generally that racism is why he can't achieve. Thirdly, black women then settle into a life of unhappiness, abuse, and mistreatment, all by the hands of an underachieving man. How Umar Johnson's advocacy for financially investing in an underachiever is keeping black men as the underachievers of society. Although, as I said in the opening, how this advice Umar Johnson gives out to black women actually negatively impacts black men is not really my concern. If you can't see it for yourself, how this will negatively impact the men in our community, then let me point it out. A woman investing in a man who is already unable to achieve helps him to remain there, simply because he is taking no responsibility for his own destiny. He is reliant, again, on a woman, not his mother, not his sister, not his aunt, but this time you, to help him, in quotation marks, get where he needs to be, as Umar Johnson has asserted. Do you see any other male group going to a person who is more oppressed than them because of their gender for help constantly, as a source of help for them to actualize as men or manifest their desires? Better yet, answer me this. Do you see anyone going to the most oppressed demographic in society, black and brown women, because of their gender and their race, asking for financial handouts other than black men who advocate for this? Do you want to be that woman? Do you want to tie yourself to poverty for life, as the Brookings Institute found? Do you want to have to deal with jealousy and possibly abuse from a man who sees you as competition and also a key resource for himself? I don't play them, and by this I mean the Umar Johnsons, the Tyler Perrys, and the Kevin Samuels, and the manosphere as a whole, any attention, because the message is always the same. No matter who is delivering it, it's always the same message. Black women, please continue to lower your standards, so on the sly you can coddle black men and cover up any failures, and you can't or won't want to measure us against anyone else or any other men and what they are doing in their communities. And while you're at it, black women, don't expect anything from black men. Just shut up, give us a 50-50 relationship that we're demanding from you, because we can't provide, or we don't want to provide anything, while we also continue to disrespect you and tell you your degree and education means nothing. Please and thank you, Black women. That's the average Black male podcaster's message today. In between commentary on why your degree, education, well-paid job, and ability to support yourself, or your hair extensions, your eyelash extensions, your nails, or your makeup, all these things are to blame for them finding additional fault in you as a Black woman. And that is the narrative that we have. Does that sound like a message from any man you should take seriously? Does that sound like a message from any man that you should date, marry, or even, quotation marks, invest in, as Umar Johnson is advocating for Black women to do? Personally, I tuned out from the manosphere years ago when I started to find them so tiresome to listen to. I could use research and disprove a lot of the bullshit that they were saying, and eventually I found them very unattractive to date as a group of men. My tuning out of these groups of men happened as a natural progression for me without even trying. As soon as I decentered Black men and men in general and what their needs are in favour for my own needs and the needs of every other Black or brown woman's as a priority, they completely didn't mean anything to me anymore. And in 2025, as a Black woman who could be listening to this, I pose the same question to you. Will you be doing the same? Will you be tuning out these messages? No matter who you are listening to this or who you are if you're reading this in the written version, what do you think of Umar Johnson's special message to Black women? Let me know. Much love, the Black Woman Essayist.